I'm in 3 different hotels in 5 days.
Oh, really? Why is that?
It's your fault, Sam.
I'm sorry. Well, I'm apologizing.
We're staying at the Omni block on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that.
And then, but we have Monday, right? Like it starts 8 a.m. Insights starts at 8 a.m. or something ridiculous on Monday or on Tuesday. So we have to like fly in Monday night. So we don't get the Omni rate. So I'm staying at the Holiday Inn across the street.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
I'll be there Sunday. So if anybody wants to party.
Is that a general announcement or just to us too?
It's a general announcement. If people listening to this on a Monday, we're in Nashville as you're listening to this, dear audience, dear listeners.
And you've already partied with Sam, apparently. So
you've already partied. You've run your hands through my hair. You've nuzzled my neck.
This is Top Line.
This month's sponsor for Top Line is Clue. Go-to-market leaders need help too, and you can learn from some of the very best sales and marketing leaders at Compete Week 2023, powered by our friends over at Clue. GTM leaders from Palo Alto Networks, HubSpot, Lacework, and more will all be taking the virtual stage November 8th and 9th, sharing the tactics, tips, and strategies they're using every single day to win and retain more business against the competition. 2 days of nonstop, industry-leading competitive enablement content. All at Compete Week 2023. Register for free today at CompeteWeek.com. That's CompeteWeek.com. Thanks for listening.
My wife and I, our last trip before COVID, March 10th, was in Nashville, and it was so awesome. The Country Music Hall of Fame, Grand Ole Opry. It was so good.
So I love it. And it's going to be good again, my brothers.
It's going to be good again, just like this episode. Just like
this is going to be look at that transition. So what are we doing today?
Episodes of
me.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. What are we doing today? I have a guest. Upcoming that I should probably tell her she join now.
Yeah, she's not in the waiting room.
On today's episode of Top Line with your host, Sam Jacobs, CEO of Pavilion, Asad Zaman, CEO of STA, Sales Talent Agency, and AJ Bruno, CEO of QuotaPath. We have a follow-up special to the episode that everyone loved last week. Everyone loved it. So many accolades for having Peter on, head of insights at Carta, as our guest. Went through compensation, in-depth compensation. I've had, this is going to sound weird, strange. I had a dream 2 nights ago about that episode, that all of us were in the same room and we were talking compensation. That's where shit gets real with this. Today's episode, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into compensation and talk about sales compensation as well. On Monday, we released our sales compensation report. Kelly O'Halloran, who will be joining us here shortly. She is our head of content at QuotaPath and spent the last 6 months really putting this report together. Kelly.
Hello, Kelly.
Make sure you're not on Zoom, Kelly.
Hello there.
Hi.
How are y'all?
Good. We're doing
nice
great.
To meet you, Kelly.
Yeah, I haven't met you before. I'm Kelly. Very nice to meet you. Sam, great to see you again. AJ, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. I know.
Always a pleasure.
You said that with just the right amount of discontent. Right. So it was perfect.
No, there is zero discontent here.
Kelly and I have a one-on-one every other Friday. And Kelly always does this thing that I love. She sends me a note and she's like, hey, are you actually going to show up to this one-on-one today?
Oh my God.
Like, Kelly, of course I'm going to. And then she's like, are you really doing that? Or are you going to get your beard trimmed? Because you always plan on your beard getting trimmed like randomly around that time. So Kelly,
how many does he miss? How many one-on-ones does he miss? Let's get the lowdown.
That's a very good question. And it's kind of changed because initially we were in talks of partnering together on a book. And so we had a one-on-one scheduled every other week to work on that throughout the year. And then we decided to slow down those plans, but it was left on the calendar. So now, I mean, I would say it's at least once a month that we do have it.
Yeah, we meet once a month, but Kelly, you're right. I got really jealous when Sam's book came out, and I was like, "Hey, Kelly, we can't let Sam Jacobs one up us here. We have to write a book together."
I mean, and then you have
Oh
Pablo.
my God.
Amy's book is coming out. Amy Bollis's, or she's I think she's working on it.
Oh, really? Amy has her book coming out. Yeah, she is. That's right. She is working on it. Kelly and I have a great backstory. So before we get into the report, Kelly was a reporter previously, editor, if you will, for Built-in, and she worked directly at Built-in Austin. And back in my Trendkite days, she interviewed a lot of Trendkite folks, myself included. And I think one of my favorite articles that's still on my LinkedIn today, Kelly, is the article that she wrote. She has a sales background, Compass Learning, if I remember correctly. Throwback.
Yeah. I think it's gone through 2 to 3 other name changes since I was there.
Yeah. Well, I just found out that my school used Compass Learning up until last year. They're like, and we replaced Compass Learning with this. I was like, oh, Compass Learning. Well, didn't even know we still used it there. So
I bet I know the person who sold it to that school district.
You probably do. So when we had the head of content role open up, Kelly reached out to me. She's like, AJ, let's talk about this. And I remember her interview super well because she was like, I want to do this thing called QuotaPath. And Quoka, if you're not familiar, is the world's happiest animal that exists in Australia. Right, Kelly?
Yes, only in Australia. It's actually pronounced Quokka.
Yeah, what's Quoka for us?
Which, yeah, I only learned that on a children's song that was going through the alphabet.
Yeah. So in our app, we don't since our brand refresh, we used to have a little happy Quoka that would jump up and down inside of it, and RIP, the Quoka. So today, Kelly is best known for her work on insights with compensation. Comptober is upon us. And Kelly, we're glad to have you here and would love for you to kick things off and tell us a little bit about the report and some of the insights that you drew from it and just the details around that journey to release on Monday.
Yeah, thanks so much for welcoming me on this, by the way. I feel like I need a microphone. I feel left out. I had my headphones plugged in to try and get that mic so the sound quality would be better, but the sound
great.
So here we go. I partnered with Global Surveys, which is an insight partners company, which was our Series A head investor, right, AJ?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're a lead, and they're going to be in next week. They're going to be at Nashville as well. They have an event on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so partnered with them on this survey. Reason why last year we had done a compensation trend survey kind of via guerrilla marketing. We were able to generate 350 responses from both sales leadership and sales people outside of sales who were able to get access to the survey. And we didn't really have control over the data and who was responding to it. So we got some really great stuff around compensation structures last year, but this year we wanted to have more control over who was responding to it. And we wanted leadership roles and above. We wanted to eliminate the IC entirely and just focus on RevOps, sales, and finance leaders, primarily from VP levels and above. We also wanted to beat out that 350 response rate. I think our goal was 400, but they were able to collect data so quickly. And finance people were really excited to do this. So it was completely swung where it was, they hit 350 responses and 250 of those were finance leaders. So I was like, wait, guys, this is going to skew the data a ton. We need more responses from RevOps and sales, please. That's how we ended up with 450. So I thought that was really interesting. Primarily leaders from tech adjacent industries, insurance and manufacturing snuck in there a little bit, but also primarily from the UK and the US.
Interesting. Kelly, I was going through the report and it has some really interesting data, and it's a good follow-up to our last conversation because we were looking at compensation more at the macro level for technology companies, and now we can kind of click into the go-to-market function, and it also gives us a read on how these companies are doing from a revenue perspective. So it's super fascinating. What was something that really stood out to you as like the headline insight from the survey, or the one that shocked you the most?
Yeah. There were two. The one was about understanding comp plans, your sales team understanding comp plans, which, I mean, working at QuotaPath for 2 years, having been a previous sales rep, like we all know comp plans, reps struggle to understand their comp plans. I struggle to understand my comp plan. But when leaders reveal that it takes their team an average of 3 to 6 months to understand how they're paid, that just seemed absolutely wild to me, because you're halfway through the year and they don't even know what types of deals they should be pushing for, what extra asks they should be making. So obviously they're just going to sell what they're most comfortable doing, which maybe is beneficial to the rep, maybe it's not, but it's likely not beneficial to the company. I just couldn't believe that that's kind of like the benchmark right now, is that it's taking them 3 to 6 months. Like that just seems like a huge missed opportunity. The other one was that I think it was 39% said that their plans did not align with their key business metrics, which again, that might have something to do with the market at hand, where last year's report revealed that the more changes you make to your comp plans, the less trust sales reps have in them, which makes sense. But this year called for some changes, and it seems like a lot of companies didn't make those changes. And now you have 90% of them missing quota and reps not even knowing what triggers to go after.
That one, 90% missing quotas is intense. Like that means, I was thinking about this at what are the risks of 90% of a team missing its quota. And there's this idea of a salesperson has 3 elements of compensation: a salary, your variable commission, which you achieve when you hit your targets, and then your equity. Last week, we discussed that they're getting 28% less equity or 29% less equity. And in the Carter report, salaries are only up by 0.3%. Let's just say round down, they're not up, right? At the same time, inflation has been higher. So just on those 2 components, people are making less money because they're not achieving their targets and their salaries are flat when inflation's happening and they're not getting equity. And so it makes me think of the purchasing power of a salesperson, right? Like in 2021 and 2022, Sam, you talk about this, people are making a lot of money. They go and spend that money, right? You buy a better house, you buy a better car, your clothes, you're going for the brand that's one level up, your shoes look a bit nicer. And then the next year hits and you're in this situation where you're making dramatically less money, but your costs have gone up. Your nut is bigger. And so that puts a lot of pressure. Your purchasing power has gone down. Your financial stress has gone up. And I think where it probably plays out for the organization is that you have salespeople who sound like they need to win that deal in conversations with prospects. And I personally hate to buy from a person who sounds like they need that deal, because I can't trust that person anymore. And I have a feeling like there are a lot of people in technology companies that are salespeople that are selling with that energy being put across. And I think this is a big risk for organizations. AJ, Sam, what do you guys think about that?
I mean, that's a fascinating insight, Asid. That is so interesting to like take it to the behavior and the credibility. It also speaks to the finance persona answering this and like really wanting to lean into this type of survey where they're probably seeing those behaviors add up if you bottom up those and seeing what that's doing to the business. And when you're exiting a part of a team and making those decision points, you're feeling like a lot of the team is like getting more and more urgent, more and more desperate to be able to like figure it out. Now, when Kelly said 3 to 6 months for the ramp, her first interesting insight, we talked about this. I thought that was probably like new hires on ramp, but no, that's everyone starting with their new comp plan, that it takes 3 to 6 months. And that makes sense based on some of our previous conversations where they might not even get their comp plan delivered until March to get sign off. So then it's like, okay, well then you got to take another 3 months to understand it. And so you take all of these things that we're talking about here and you add the uncertainty and the friction and the frustration, you'd have a lot of downward pressure on the sales team to perform. And like the company is relying on them to basically hit the number where like everything feels a little out of whack, I think.
I think to your point, Asid, it's this is very concerning. And I think, just speaking like down to the point of human psychology, a lot of people, I forget what psychological book I read, but it was something about how, it was that book, The Status Game, that I was talking about a couple months ago, where the people hate one of the biggest drivers of suicide is sudden losses of status. And you can imagine, like, during the Great Depression, when the stock market collapsed in the 20s and all these people sort of quote unquote went bust. And my point is that I think that that's probably, there's an individual component, which is that people thought they were a certain thing. Maybe it was because they've achieved a certain income level. Maybe it was because they've achieved a certain type of lifestyle. And moving backwards once you've accomplished that lifestyle or feel like you've attained a certain threshold, and then having to face the reality that maybe you have to move from a 2-bedroom apartment to a 1-bedroom apartment. Maybe you can't actually afford the place that you thought you could afford. I think that is rippling through our ecosystem in ways that is causing, and it's CEOs and founders, all the way down to, the individual reps. And I think there's a lot of, again, we've talked about, maybe this is creative destruction, and maybe this is something that ultimately makes us healthier or stronger or better, but there's still a lot of pain that's flowing through the ecosystem. And then the second thing I would say is just looking at this, and I'm looking at, 91% of teams are not hitting quota, 35% blaming misaligned sales activities. I also just think a company of any meaningful size is caught. And if you've got a meaningfully sized sales team, you are at extreme disadvantage to a tiny, more nimble company that's probably perhaps bootstrapped, but maybe just a handful of reps. I saw a CEO Pavilion member. I'm in Seattle right now for the Unleash conference, and he was in good spirits because he's got a small team, but they just had a great August and a great September. And so for him, the economy seems to be coming back, at least the B2B economy. But then I saw a couple CEOs with much larger sales organizations, and there was a look of consternation on their face and an almost haggard look. And one of the people that I spoke to yesterday is a really well-known CEO, where, he was being paraded around a couple years ago on stages as the consummate and preeminent unicorn CEO, building something massive and huge and special. And it almost appeared like he'd aged 10 years in the last year, and he just looked different. And so that's what I take away from this, which is there's still this one more hump or two more humps. I don't know how much, but there's still this period of jettisoning the vestiges of what we thought we were, so that we could become something new. And I don't mean to be too metaphysical about it, but that's sort of what I take from the report.
It's interesting. I was looking at, because there's a couple of sources now of data. There's QuotaPath that gives you this macro view of how a team is doing. There's obviously Quota that gives you the macro view of the company. And then RepView is interesting because it kind of gives you the rep sentiment of what's going on in the business. And so I went and looked at some of their data. And if you look at August and September, and they break it down by different functions, but you average it out across the sales team, you have about 60% of reps saying, we're nowhere close to quota. And so it shows that the companies are not performing well, which is why so many of them are going out of business, right? Last week they shared how many companies are filing for bankruptcy, and it was a shocking number. And I was chatting with Kyle Norton yesterday about this, and he's like, if you take that number and then you take the amount of companies that are doing down rounds and you put those together, it really is concerning. And this shows us that pressure is going to continue for a while. Like there's no number here where you're like, ooh, there's going to be an uplift, right? Because when you looked at the Q2 earnings reports, they were interesting because you saw companies like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft show that the consumption trends were going upwards. And so it felt like, oh, that optimization period is done. The leading indicator of the market is these cloud companies, and maybe there's going to be an uplift after that. This data is showing that there is no uplift. It's still pretty much you're in the thick of things. And now we've obviously got certain signals that we can talk about in a bit that make 2024 seem concerning, grindy, and how many people have it in them to be able to navigate that is a big question mark. What else really stood out to you guys in this report?
I just have one thing to say too on those points you made. I'm curious to see how this impacts the number of sales reps who stay in sales, because it seems like there's likely to be more layoffs, which will include sales reps, but also who is going to be just jumping ship from sales in general because their quotas are unrealistic or they're just not hitting them and they aren't getting any type of compensation increases because the rate is what would you say it was like 0.3%?
Yeah, salary increase was 0.3%. Now, I think you're right, because I would say that too many people who should not have been in sales came into sales in the last couple of years because sales became easier.
The SDR, we have those SDR training grounds. There's a lot of SDR platforms that were like, hey, you can go from teacher to becoming an SDR. Those companies sprouted up overnight, Asid. That's exactly what you're talking about.
And generally, there was just so much demand for this talent that we were pulling from everywhere to put people into sales. And sales was easier because interest rates were low. So by nature, demand is easier to generate because people are feeling bullish and spending and investing, etc. I was looking at this stat, the evolution of the go-to-market team spend. So in 2018, 30% of the spend for a go-to-market team was on AEs and their compensation. Now that is 10%. So there's so much money that we were all spending on random tools and all these things. And I think part of it was a lot of people entered sales that just don't have it in them to be great salespeople when you get markets that are, I think, the standard markets where interest rates are 3 or 4%, where demand is not so easy to generate. And I think it's probably good that it kind of cleans out a bit and a bunch of people that are just not meant for this career path move on. And the ones who are meant for it, who can ride the waves in each market, the good markets and the grindy markets, they kind of stick around. So I think there will be a bit of a clearing out.
Well, there's a Speaker of the House opening, so maybe someone in sales can go into politics.
Is it true that's the first time in history that's happened?
Yeah. It's only going to add further credence to Fitch's downgrade of our credit.
Yeah, for sure.
I will say, just underscoring Kelly's point and your point, Asid. Well, the first thing is you can say that we're moving to a standard world, but it is a world that if you're under 45, you haven't really experienced in the workforce. So it's hard to call that standard. It's just a different world.
I think you're right.
And, but just to underscore Kelly's point, I had somebody that had, who I think very highly of and I like. So this is not a commentary on any kind of personality, but there'd been a person that I'd worked with in the past in a sales capacity, and they'd left for more money. They'd left for more money to a different company. And they came back and they said, you know what, I want to move to CS, but these are my salary requirements. And it was, it's interesting because I think it's those two tensions of people saying, maybe this environment is just not, it's a lot less fun and it's not as easy at the same time that people's lifestyles have adjusted to a different world. And so, presented with almost saying, hey, and again, this is why I go back to like the fundamental assumptions of SaaS, right? Which is like high cost of acquisition, but they stick around. So low cost of service leads to high LTV to CAC. At some point in the out years, it's a profitable business. And when people are like, well, I want to make what I made in sales, I just want to do it in CS, it inverts the entire model. Yeah. And obviously it doesn't work. And I still think there's this grappling that people are grappling with, which is, you aren't from a human worth perspective, we're all equally beautiful in the eyes of God. But from a labor market perspective, you are worth less today than you were 2 years ago. That is a fact. And it's hard for people it's painful to acknowledge that.
Go-to-market leaders need help too, and you can learn from some of the very best sales and marketing leaders at Compete Week 2023, powered by our friends over at Clue. GTM leaders from Palo Alto Networks, HubSpot, Lacework, and more will all be taking the virtual stage November 8th and 9th, sharing the tactics, tips, and strategies they're using every single day to win and retain more business against the competition. 2 days of nonstop industry-leading competitive enablement content, all at Compete Week 2023. Register for free today at CompeteWeek.com. And now, back to our show.
I mean, what do you guys think is the solution to that, though? Is it different at the sales level? Is it a different type of pay split where primarily in SaaS, it's always been a 50-50 split for the common AE pay structure? What's next? What do you do?
I mean, I think look, our point of view, and Kelly, you see this, it's kind of funny when Sam says there's the smaller nimble team. I would put us there. I shared with both Sam and Asid that we had a great end of the quarter, and 17 deals turning around in like 2 days was just really
the biggest new business day in the history of QuotaPath. If I'm not mistaken.
on Friday was fantastic. It was great to see that. But you have to square that with what you're saying though, Sam, which is that the efficiency of teams, which are our customers, is going down. So like we have a weird like kind of like friction point that hits at each other. And I don't think it's so much the pay, Kelly. I think it's really the continuing to work to connect mission for what you're doing. And I think smaller teams can do that. So these bigger companies, Sam, that you're talking to, that whether they're on the public market or they're just kind of big and more of like their growth is through M&A, it's really, really challenging. Those CEOs that were being trotted around, they're being trotted around because they had these clear visions and they were evangelizing their categories. They're no longer really doing that because the categories either shrunk, gone away, or changed altogether. That stat, Asid, 30% to 10% is striking. Yeah. That is striking. And so much of this we're talking about, I think Kelly's right. Like you're just going to have people leaving sales overall. And that's disappointing for our craft and something that we care a lot about and want to get better. But how do we get better
why is it disappointing?
Closing in?
I'm not disappointed. Like, I think it's totally fine. I think people that were never meant to be salespeople became salespeople. Sucks. They'll go out and do something else that's a better fit for them. But I think, who's not leaving? It's the top 5-10%. They're not leaving. They're loving life.
I'll tell you one thing that I think I'm super bullish on, but you all can tell me if I'm full of beans.
Bullish thing. Let's roll.
I'm bullish on high quality. Here's the forces that I think are at work right now. I think what we're talking about is real. And I think that, to your point, Asid, you could say it's disappointing or not disappointing. And this is a healthy thing. I just would encourage us all to avoid any kind of moralistic tones. We're just all reacting to the new physics of the marketplace. But the point is that I think that there's this idea that like, well, working for a company is not as interesting. But what if I had a portfolio of different companies that I could sell, different solutions that I could sell? And so I see commission only, outsourced, high performing ICs, not shitty salespeople, but really top people that wanted to be VPs or were VPs of sales and saying, you know what, I don't really want to manage a team. And the world of being a C-suite executive at a high growth company is pretty volatile. So why don't I just become an IC? I'm somebody that buyers want to talk to, and I'll sell 3 or 4 or 5 different technology solutions that are non-competitive and make a ton of money. And then the company themselves don't have to carry my salary as a fixed cost. I don't know. We've been experimenting with that. We've had great success with it at Pavilion. And the person that's leading the charge on it is thinking about, building an entire agency of senior executives that just want to close business. And I've met a lot of those people in my career that are just like, you know what? I like my lifestyle. I like my freedom. I'll sell. Pay me when I close something.
Force Management's entire sales team was CROs who were like, I'm done being a CRO. And so these were guys like who had been CROs at elite companies. They were killers. And they were just then going and being salespeople in the market, making $500,000-$600,000 doing it. And Force Management grew substantially because they had the best people possible talking to their customers. And a lot of these people were actually previous Force Management customers as well. So it became a really good flywheel for them. So it does work. Like that type of thing does work.
I have that as a topic that I'll be covering in my content calendar, the freelancer sales rep. So I might be hitting you both up in the future to learn more about this and specifically how you compensate someone for this. So more to come on that.
I think The thing about that does stand out to me, though, is that I don't think the majority of great salespeople will lean into that model. I think a lot of them have a fixed cost structure that requires cash flow coming in on a predictable and consistent basis. And I think there are enough companies out there, even right now in this downturn, that are doing well enough that they need to build elite go-to-market teams, and they're going to find a way to really lock those people in. Those are the people that they want, right? So they're going to figure out, how do I get this person to give me 100% of their time and make it really worth their while to do so. So I think the top 5-10%, which is the part of the world that I spend most of my time interacting with, I think there will be people within it that will explore that model, but the majority of them will be locked in with elite organizations selling on their behalf. What happens to the rest of the 90 or 80% of reps out there is the big question mark, and we'll just see how that plays out. There was this one thing that I wanted to touch on before we move on to our next section is there was a stat that said 30% said maintaining simplicity was the biggest obstacle when designing comp plans, and 30% of leaders aren't confident about that their comp plans motivate their sales teams. Why is maintaining simplicity an obstacle, AJ? To me, it sounds like it should be simple. It should be on half a page. It should be easy to understand. It seems simple to be able to execute that. What happens? Why is this still a problem?
Well, Asad, you know what they say: if you hire someone to do a job, they're going to do a job. I think over time, what we've seen is you have complexity in the organization. Let's say you're above a $10 million ARR company, and you have the hierarchy, you have the sales management team, you have RevOps. You start using Jira tickets for your legal and all of these things. And you typically have so many stakeholders that are coming in that are pointing to I need this, I need the reps to act like this. I need to make sure that we're collecting cash within 30 days. So I need you to have some sort of a bonus on the ledger when it goes out, so it's not overdue invoices. Okay, let's add that. That in by itself seems like a very innocuous thing where you're okay, that's not that big of a deal. But over time, you can easily add 10, 20, 30 of these. So imagine you're a RevOps leader coming into an organization. Let's say the company's 10 years old. It's in SaaS, and they've gone through 3 rounds of funding. They're growth equity. You're the third RevOps leader coming in. During this time, your company may have moved from HubSpot to Salesforce. Your company may have moved from QuickBooks to NetSuite. Your company may have gotten its first CFO. Your company may have expanded product lines. They may have gotten a new investor that had a different way of thinking about the go-to-market motion. You add all of these different components, and what you're really talking to is the compensation plan. And so this idea, there's so many people that stand up on a stage and they're like, I write my comp plan on the back of a napkin. That's great. But I've gone through comp plan process. It's very, very difficult to stay simple because you got to throw out things. Typically, you just have to throw it out and start from scratch. You have to take what's going on in the company and you're aligning the company objectives. You actually have to go to the CEO board level for this. I know that sounds crazy. It's really, should we really do that? It's just basically ARR math.
Yeah, shouldn't it just be sales teams on newer ARR? Shouldn't it be that simple? Why are we tying it to every little objective of the business?
Well, because everyone feels like they're fiefed up. Yeah, but that's what. Look, last week we talked about the average tenureship of someone at a company, $100 million company, was 2 years.
Yeah,
2 years, Asad.
Less than 2 years.
So less than 2 years. I remember when we were talking to Hopin. Hopin was a customer of ours and got bought by RingCentral. We were talking to them 2 years ago when they were on their massive, their trajectory to the moon. Remember this? Everyone was talking about Hopin.
I remember it.
I got on a call with 7 people from revenue operations. 7 people. Do you know what the longest tenure in that room was?
What? 9
months. 2 months. So you're asking, why do comp plans get screwed up? Look, this is the thing. And so we're unwinding this. Everything we're talking about in this conversation is an unwinding of something.
Well, and also, again, just to beat my drum, nobody's understood. The reason that comp plans are complicated is if you could trust your finance and RevOps organizations to ensure that margin was consistent and predictable when you sold a deal, sure, they can be simple and you just sell ARR and we'll get paid on it. but 2 years isn't just in the sales org; it's in the finance org too. And there's just a group of people. Again, what's standard? Well, if you grew up in the last 10, 15 years, then standard is you have no idea what gross margin even means, let alone operating margin. And you don't understand, you fundamentally, if you work at a software company and you're not educated, you don't intellectually grasp the idea that when you sell money, it all just doesn't flow to the bottom line. You're like, well, they'll pay me 10% or 15% and the rest they get to keep. It's like, dude or dudess or whatever, however you identify, look around. No, we don't get to fucking keep it. It goes every which way. It goes to SDRs, it goes to managers, it goes to the sales tech, marketing tech, it goes to Salesforce increasing my bill 9% and Slack sticking me with a bullshit bill. I hate that company so much.
A little too close to home, Sam.
Yeah, anyway, I'll keep extrapolating more broadly. But anyway, that's the issue. The issue is like, they could be simple. We could pay on margin, but then do you want the rep worrying about margin? It's like, no, I don't want the rep worrying about margin. I want it simple. Okay, well then I need to make sure that these SKUs and that I've designed the organization super, super well. And when everybody's been there for 16 months, including all the ops people, all the HR people, all the finance people, it's not going to be that way. And so the finance person is coming in afterwards and saying, all right, well, let me see if I can fix this a little bit. But, you get a spiff for a multi-year deal. You get a spiff for all paid up, it's because the underlying operational infrastructure of the business shouldn't be the salesperson's problem to worry about, but it's just as messy as the salesperson.
It's fascinating. Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
I was just going to say, our big takeaway from the report was that finance needs to be introduced in the process earlier. Right now, what we're seeing is that they're kind of coming in at the end and then they're just hacking it apart. So then you get something that, might be more optimized to the business, but it doesn't motivate the reps, or it's doing one, but not all the things that it should do together. And so, I don't know, have some pre-meetings with finance before you start designing your comp plans to try and knock that out early.
So we've now had, in the last podcast, we've discussed compensation at the macro level. We've discussed company shutdowns. Right now, we've gone in on the sales team and gotten a really good read of what's happening there. And it seems like the leading indicators are not very, very exciting, right? Like there are more bankruptcies are up, compensations down, quota attainments really low. And then we have this market data that's been coming out over the last couple of weeks that is really important. So what has happened in the market is that after a couple of really positive inflation readings, we got a negative one. And the Fed met after that. And what the Fed communicated to the market afterwards has really sent a shockwave through the market. So what the Fed has is this thing called the dot plot, and it shows what they are projecting in the coming quarters. And so I looked into this. What was the dot plot before versus now? So basically, the Fed has projected one more rate hike for 2023 compared to the market thinking that it would be flat. And for 2024, the Fed is projecting a 5.1% rate by the end of 2024, which is basically 2 rate cuts. And the market was projecting 4.7% or below, which is 3 to 4 rate cuts. Basically, that's how the Fed tells us higher rates for longer. There's this thing that it shares with us. Jobless claims came up worse than expected. So they came in at 201,000. The expectation was 220,000. And in terms of job openings, we have 9.6 million job openings at the end of August, up from 690,000 in July. So basically, the market is now showing us the signals that this sentiment around 2024 potentially being a grind is real. We'll see how it plays out, because I think we don't have enough information to be sure. The Fed has said things and changed their mind as new data has presented itself. So I think people should still be open-minded and wait for more information. The question I have is about Q4. So Q4 is one of the most important quarters in tech, right? So many businesses close such a large amount of their yearly revenue in Q4. We were coming into Q4 with positivity, and now we're in Q4 and there's negativity. How does this make you feel, Sam, about your business and about the market generally? Like, is the ecosystem going to have a really shitty end to the year?
What a question, Asid.
Yeah, no pressure.
My opinion is largely unchanged. We talked about this when we were talking about forecasting and planning, right? It's like, can you? I think things are what they are. I mean, we're throwing a conference. We had hoped to get 300 or 400 people. There's going to be 700 people there. We're selling, 10 to 15 tickets a day at this point. And people are, so what I think is that we just can't count on them to dramatically improve. If I'm thinking, I haven't started my planning process yet, but if I'm thinking about 2024 and modeling revenue, candidly, I'm going to not model very much growth.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make sure that I manage costs appropriately. And it's going to be a lot more fun because it's better than, at least I'm in that mind space already. The place that I'm in, as I've mentioned, is like, I'll just eat all of the shit this year. And then even if things don't change, at least next year we'll be positioned to be healthy and vibrant, regardless of it, and not need. Hope is not a strategy, not counting on something that I can't foresee happening in order to save the organization. We're going to be designed so that listen, if everybody just stops spending completely, then yeah, we're totally fucked, as is everybody. But my point is, like, I'm going to assume that it's not going to get way worse. It'll just be like this. Okay, I can live like this.
That conversation that happened at the beginning of the year at the CEO Summit, and I go back to that keynote. I think Matt
Bloomberg,
Matt Bloomberg. I think that's his talk last year in January would be really appropriate for January this year. And one of the things that he said was look for green shoots. We've talked a little bit about it before. I think that that's really the right mindset, Sam. If we set the expectation and then layer on the different levers, market, product, our company, growth, that's the right way to do it. And we've been given a gift. I mean, Austin's talked about how important it has been to focus on fewer things. We've done it. Kelly knows this at QuotaPath similarly. And that allows us to have kind of this like pull away all of the bullshit moment for us to look at 2024 and start with less. And that's great. And I agree with you, Sam. And if we set those expectations, then if you can't be upset if we meet expectations, right? You can be upset otherwise, but if we meet expectations, we at least called our shot, and that's what we're driving towards.
I think, to your point, AJ, the main thing we've all got to do is whatever path we choose, like, you gotta find a way, whether it's live within your means, whatever you want to say. Like, we can't white knuckle it for another 12 to 24 months. There's got to find a way to have joy. I don't want your heart acting up again next year, AJ. I want you to be healthy. I want all of us to be healthy. We all got to find a way, so that I just had too many moments, and I talk about this a lot, beginning with New Year's Eve of 2022. I just can't do that anymore. I can't do that thing where I'm like, holy fuck, did I completely misunderstand something? It has to be like steady, consistent progress, so that come March or April, I can sleep easy. I've adjusted my life. This is what it is, and I'm okay.
Sam, are you sure it's not cryotherapy? Isn't the answer?
I've been doing my own cryotherapy because I've been swimming in the bay out in Sag in the morning. Oh my God, it's amazing.
I'm also doing cold plunge, Sam, every day for the last month and a half.
Come on in.
That releases
next
so
week.
Much dopamine. It's amazing. Like, it's like having 10 chocolates or something. It's wild.
Yeah.
I can't do that. Okay.
Yeah, no complaints.
Kelly's got no comment on this part of the conversation.
Good. I did a Tough Mudder many years ago, and that included jumping from a platform into a trailer filled with ice water that then you had to like swim underwater at one point, and it was a terrible experience. So I'm good.
Well, okay. Kelly, we're really thanks for coming.
Yes, Kelly, thank you.
And great work on this report. It's really, really interesting.
So good.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're doing a good thing. Looks like you're in Austin. Is that right?
I am, yes.
That's an extreme Austin.
How does that look like? It's a drawing room.
It's just everything screams Austin, including the sleeping dog on the couch. Oh yeah, it's
I didn't notice that.
What a lazy sack of shit.
No, Sam, thank you for properly identifying her though, because I've had multiple people be like, I really like your cat.
That looks like a rescue dog if I've ever seen one. A lovable rescue dog, hike and bike trail, catching squirrels, all the things.
Yep, that's accurate. Oh, all right. Well, thanks so much, because I appreciate
Kelly.
that.
Thanks, Kelly.
Kelly.
Bye.
Okay.
Processing. Great conversation. Great work on that report, AJ. That was good stuff.
All the team, you guys both know this. Anything that gets shouted out to us, it's actually our team that does all the work. So you got to shout it back out to them, to Kelly, of course, and Sarah, and my marketing team is Brett on demand gen as well. But I think the thing that I look to as an opportunity for QuotaPath for certain, like I look at Carta and how they're delivering their insights. We're going to move more towards that as well. We'll have customer analytics. So next quarter, after we have Peter back, we'll have an insight report that will be much more customer analytics driven for Q4.
I think Peter's coming back in a month. They have another wild report coming. Yeah. So they're doing a fantastic job.
Busy. Yeah.
Okay, let's do shoutouts.
Shoutouts. Yeah.
Sam, who are you shouting out?
Who am I shouting out? Who am I going to shout out? I'm going to shout out Kevin McCarthy. Rest in peace, my brother. World's most thankless job. Speaker of the House to a bunch of crazy motherfuckers.
He just up and quit. Like not even running. Not even going to run again.
I'm done.
I'm out, guys. This is crazier than I thought.
Austin, who are you shouting out?
That's my shout out.
I'm teaching again. I designed a course at Pavilion earlier this year called How to Build an Elite Go-to-Market Leadership Team from No Revenue to 50 million in ARR, and I had a good time teaching it. I got a CSAT of 98%. I believe I'm the best in the world now. And so I'm teaching this again, and it's just so energizing and inspiring to be in a room of great revenue leaders and just see how much time and energy they invest in up-leveling themselves. Like they're CROs from Series C and D stage companies, VPs of sales, and they're there on time, video on, doing the reading afterwards, thinking about the concepts, and it just energizes me a lot. And I look forward to the Rolex or something that Sam's going to send me when I get 100% CSAT on this one. But shout out to everyone in that class.
I am going to shout out one of our customers, Dennis Dube. He's also a Pavilion member.
He is a Pavilion member.
Yeah, Everview, OSG previously. We met him on Pavilion. He came as a customer through Pavilion, direct one-to-one ROI.
Oodalali.
Dennis has been a customer for 2 years. We're doing some really interesting product research right now, and he was very gracious with his time with me yesterday. I spent an hour conversing back and forth on the world. He's a world builder and vision, and is very excited about what we're doing. But it's awesome to have great customers and conversations, because we can talk all the doom and gloom like we did at the beginning of this conversation, and then you have one customer conversation to flip that. So thank you, Dennis.
That's amazing. Okay.
Well, AJ,
I gotta send us off. I know. I gotta send us off. All right. From your co-host, Sam Jacobs, CEO of Pavilion, Asad Zaman, CEO of Sales Talent Agency, and of course me, AJ Bruno, CEO of QuotaPath. This has been another fantastic episode of Top Line. See y'all next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Top Line. To learn more about the trends, news, and developments impacting the world of B2B SaaS, head to joinpavilion.com, where more than 10,000 of the world's top go-to-market leaders go to achieve and unlock their full professional potential.